October 19th, 1942, south of Minsk, Mazowiecki. Frost bit the wind. Mud sucked at the wheels of every German convoy moving east. Oberleutnant Karl Schaefer leaned from his half-track, watching a Polish girl in a ragged brown coat tie something across the road ahead. A thin rope, sagging, pointless, fluttered in the cold air. "She thinks that will stop us," Schaefer muttered, smirking. Behind him, 5 trucks growled with weight, full of ammunition for the siege at Stalingrad. The drivers laughed. One of them spat. Another reached for a cigarette. The girl walked away. Schaefer gave the order to move. And then the road vanished in light. A blast so sudden, so violent, it bent trees and punched his eardrums in. Flames raced up the line, one truck, then the next, each igniting like matchboxes soaked in oil. Schaefer hit the dirt. Fire rained from the sky. Men screamed. His radio crackled once, then silence. Where the girl had stood, there was only smoke. He hadn't even seen her light the fuse. October 1942. Warsaw sat under German boots, crushed, but not broken. The Ninth Army had turned the city into a checkpoint. Every alley watched, every train inspected. Orders came from General Hans Weiss: hold Poland, feed the Eastern Front. Fuel, munitions, rations, all roads ran east. Schaefer arrived in early October. Young, precise, sharp uniform, boots polished even in the mud. His task: oversee convoy security from Minsk Mazowiecki to Brest. Routine logistics, he called it, just trucks and peasants. His men joked that Poland was quieter than Bavaria. Resistance? Scattered kids with rusted rifles. A lieutenant even said, "Their bravest fighter is a farmer's wife with a pitchfork." What they didn't see, what they refused to see, was that under the silence, Warsaw was listening, watching, drawing lines on maps. In an attic just blocks from the German motor pool, a girl named Basaya studied the road schedule. Every day at 0600, the same 5 trucks left Depot 12. One of them always carried detonators. That was enough. Basia was 20. She'd watched her father dragged off by the Gestapo, her brother shot for curfew violation. She didn't carry a gun, not yet. She carried memory and a rope. The Germans, Schaefer among them, believed in steel, in maps, in protocols. They didn't believe one girl could touch a supply chain feeding half a front. Meanwhile, Polish couriers rode bicycles through rubble to deliver a single sheet of paper. 5 trucks. Same road, same time. One weak turn near the river. No guard tower. No overhead tree cover. Flat land. Perfect for a trick. Schaefer signed requisitions with ink that smelled of oil. He read daily updates. Supply movement normal. Resistance minimal. The system was smooth. Trucks left. Trucks arrived. He saw efficiency because he only looked at the numbers. But Warsaw's silence was not peace. It was planning. At night, Basaya memorized truck intervals by the sound alone. She knew which engines rattled from overuse. She could hear a faulty brake from 2 blocks away. Schaefer, in his field notebook, wrote, "Polish population subdued. Minimal sabotage observed." She smiled when she read that, the page copied by a mole in the records office. It meant they still believed. 3 days before the explosion, Schaefer saw it for the first time, a rope tied low across a dirt path. He was riding with Oberfeld-Webel-Meissner, inspecting convoy routes. The rope stretched loosely across the tire tracks. Dust clung to it, barely visible. Child's prank, Meissner said. Schaefer nodded. Polish farm games. Let it be. They drove on. That night, one of the fuel trucks reported a delay. A wheel caught something. Small damage. Nothing serious. Then, a report from Patrol Unit 37. Unmarked Polish youth seen near Route 12. Fled when approached. Still, nothing actionable. The officers laughed. They tie ropes. We drive tanks. Basia, meanwhile, returned to the field that night. With hands cracked from cold, she pulled the rope tight, 1 inch higher than before. She looked to the trees. There, buried beneath rotting leaves, a cord, a fuse. In a hayloft not far away, a Polish mechanic rewired a German shell's detonator, carefully, silently. They called it gift wrapping. 2 days later, Schaefer passed the rope again. Still there, still ignored. But his driver, a veteran of Narvik, frowned. Sir, ropes don't stay tied like that. Not with this wind. Schaefer waved him off. That night, wind screamed through the forest. A lone figure in boots stepped out from the shadows. Basia. She tested the rope, tied it tighter, checked the fuse, counted seconds in her head. 7 seconds from trip to fire. That morning, the trucks rolled again. Same road, same speed, the same rope, waiting. By 0800, 5 trucks had vanished. At first, Schaefer assumed a breakdown, maybe a delay. The roads east of Minsk were always muddy this time of year. Radios crackled with static. Then silence. He called dispatch. Nothing. He sent a scout car. It came back, alone. The driver's face was white. His voice broke. They're gone, Herr Oberleutnant. All of them. Fire. Metal. Nothing left. Schaefer stared. Gone? Crater. Like lightning struck the earth. The next report came from an infantry patrol. Scorched trees, wheel fragments, 3 helmets melted to slag. There was no convoy. Just a burned road and a twisted skeleton of truck axles pointing skyward. No bullet holes, no gunfire. Just one thing found nearby. A piece of rope, half burned, tied at both ends like a snare. Schaefer didn't speak. He just walked to his tent and closed the flap. Later that day, a soldier returned from the site with a single photo. Someone had taken it from a rooftop the moment before the blast. Blurry. But you could see her, Basia, stepping back from the road. Hand lifted. A cigarette? A fuse? Nobody knew. But something in Schaefer shifted. He'd seen sabotage. He'd read manuals, studied Russian ambushes. But this wasn't strategy. It was choreography. Precision. Like she knew the exact moment each truck would cross the wire. A courier handed Schaefer the last known cargo manifest. 5 trucks, 250 artillery shells, all marked for Stalingrad. He sat back and realized they would never arrive. The morning after the blast, Schaefer walked the field alone. Frost clung to the grass, half melted by fire. Charred tires jutted from a smoking crater. He recognized one of the boots, Feldwebel Kruger, his convoy chief. Nothing else was intact. One truck had flipped, torn in half, its undercarriage shredded like paper. The fuel tank exploded sideways, slicing trees 50 meters deep into the forest. Metal still hissed. An engineer pointed to a series of thin wires burned into the earth. Not military grade. No factory stamp. Schaefer crouched and picked up a small knot, the rope. Half of it was still there, singed but whole. Tied in a loop. Simple. Familiar. That's when he saw it. Beside the blast mark, a woman's shoe. Worn. mud-caked. The kind factory girls wore in Warsaw. He didn't speak. Behind him, a young private mumbled, "No mines, sir. No grenades, just det cord and timing. Homemade." Schaefer's fingers trembled. He didn't feel the cold anymore. This wasn't luck. This was design. She timed it, down to the axle. He walked to the convoy's last position. Marks in the dirt showed the trucks were still moving when they went up. No time to brake. The entire explosion had taken less than 6 seconds. 5 trucks, a dozen men. 2 weeks of ordnance gone. He stared at the rope again. It looked like something from a stable, a farm. The war wasn't being lost in the trenches. It was being unraveled by hands he couldn't see, pulling threads he didn't understand. And the worst part? She hadn't used a gun. They brought him the documents at dusk, pulled from a safe house torched the night before, water-stained, scorched at the corners, but still legible. Maps, detailed ones. German convoy routes, fuel drop times, axle counts, guard rotations. Hand-drawn in Polish script, yet terrifyingly accurate. Schaefer's fingers traced the lines. His own schedule, copied exactly, down to the last checkpoint. He looked up. Who gave them this? The signals officer answered without meeting his eyes. The Americans, sir, through Sweden. Radio kits, code books, aerial photos. We intercepted a drop last month. Maps, fuses, and canned meat. Canned meat. As if logistics could win wars. Schaefer sat hard on the field desk. One of the captured diagrams showed a rope trap, drawn in pencil, with blast angles, wind predictions, and truck spacing. It wasn't a trick. It was science. The girl wasn't a farmer. She was a node in a machine that reached across oceans. He remembered the laughter in the officers' mess. Peasants with pitchforks. And now 5 trucks of high explosive turned to ash by a rope. He turned to the photo again, the blurry image of her stepping back from the road. One arm raised. Not random, not afraid. She knew exactly what she was doing. And worse, someone had trained her. Schaefer stood. The map was wrong. Not the one in his hand. The one in his head. The one where the Reich always outmaneuvered the enemy. That one was burning. That winter, the snow came early. Convoys moved slower. Drivers asked for escorts. Mechanics checked axles twice. But the fear, it wasn't of tanks or partisans with rifles. It was of ropes, simple, silent ropes, the kind Basia had used. Schaefer began sleeping with his boots on. Every sound at night made his hand twitch toward the pistol. Not from guilt, from the quiet knowing that the war wasn't going as written. In December, he wrote a letter to his cousin in Dresden. We were trained to expect ambushes, he wrote. But no one told us a girl could time explosions better than our engineers. He added, "We've spent years building a perfect machine, and they cut it apart with rope and bicycles." By then, rumors spread. Other convoys, other traps. One near Radziemen destroyed 3 trucks with coal dust and a match. Another used piano wire. Officers began scanning every roadside, every tree. One colonel refused to ride unless the path had been walked by dogs first. The Gestapo blamed local cells. They arrested dozens, but the attacks didn't stop. Because it wasn't one woman, it was a network, quiet, fed by Allied radios, supplied by planes flying high over Krakow, dropping crates with everything but guns. The girl's name surfaced in intercepted messages. Basia. No last name, no rank, just Basia. Schaefer found himself saying it under his breath, like a ghost story. The Reich had built panzer divisions, war plans, field hospitals, and yet one rope, one signal, 5 trucks gone. After that, the jokes in the officers' mess ended. No one laughed about peasants anymore. January 1943. The cold was biting, and the fuel lines froze before dawn. But the resistance didn't stop. The Americans had a term for it: indirect disruption. It meant supplying sabotage without ever setting foot on the battlefield. Schaefer didn't believe it until he saw the crates. They found them near Peasants, buried beneath hay bales, in a barn used for grain, marked in English, parachuted, soft wrapped for silent landings. Inside, copper wire, shaped charges, British-made date cord, American field manuals, and maps. Dozens of them, all German. Each crate held what one resistance cell needed to turn a road into a graveyard. The manifest listed Red Ball Priority. That name would haunt Schaefer later. The American Supply Express running at breakneck speed in France. But here, it was something darker. Underground, hidden. Ghosts running rail lines through occupied lands. One Polish scout, captured during a raid, confessed they had over 200 routes mapped, targets prioritized, bridges, fuel convoys, ammo depots. And they had a system: modular tools, uniform instructions, resistance cells trained to mirror each other. They taught us with photos, he said, even how to fold the DT cord. Every fold counts. It wasn't just courage, it was engineering. And it worked. In that winter alone, German field reports confirmed 183 sabotage actions in occupied Poland. Rail lines destroyed, fuel lines cut, convoys erased. Schaefer circled them on the map. They weren't random. They were coordinated, staged, precise. It looked like a military campaign. But there were no armies, just ropes, wires, maps, and a network fed by planes he never saw. The Reich still believed in tanks. The Allies? They believed in systems. Schaefer flipped through the captured field manual again. Everything had a number, a chart, a match. The Americans had engineered sabotage the way they built tanks: modular, interchangeable, scalable. 1 wrench for 10 kinds of bolts. 1 fuse for 5 kinds of charges. 1 woman to destroy 5 trucks. He studied an inventory report found in a Polish drop zone. Cache 12A, rope, fuses, wire, lighters, false papers. At the bottom, unit standard, field ready. Standard. The word rang in his ears. Germany's convoys used 7 different truck models, each with its own parts. When a tire blew on the road to Brest, they needed a specific size, often backlogged by weeks. Meanwhile, the Americans flew crates over Poland with pre-packaged kits, labeled by target type: depot, bridge, convoy. Each kit included date, cord cut to length, and packed in waxed paper to resist rain. He once mocked how Americans made coffee in helmets. Now he realized they made war the same way. Simple, scalable, replaceable. The girl Basia hadn't used battlefield weapons. She'd used what they gave her: a fuse, a timing sheet, and a length of rope. She didn't improvise, she executed. Schaefer turned to Meissner one evening and said, "We build fear with discipline. They build chaos with instructions." He remembered the early days when German units planned each movement with clockwork detail, every attack timed to the second. But now, it was them. The Americans, timing, planning, outsourcing destruction to teenagers with soft hands and bright eyes. The worst part? It worked better than any artillery barrage. The logistics report confirmed it. Each of the 5 trucks had carried 120 key artillery shells, German 10.5 cm rounds, meant for the Eastern Front, meant for Stalingrad. 600 shells reduced to ash. Schaefer read the message from Army Group Center. Delay in resupply contributed to operational stall. Estimated 12-day setback. 12 days during winter. 12 days without shelling, without fuel, without movement. It cost the Wehrmacht a corridor they never got back. In a British intelligence memo declassified years later, her name appeared in rough script. Basia, age unknown, Warsaw cell, responsible for rope fuse attack, 19 October. No medal, no rank, just Basia. No soldier remembered seeing her, but every surviving driver spoke of a blur, a rope, then flame. An American officer, years after the war, wrote in a private letter, "We just gave them the match. They lit the fire. It wasn't just sabotage. It was strategy. Calculated cost versus maximum delay. 5 trucks, a few meters of rope, 1 local girl. The loss totaled over 1 million Reichsmarks in munitions alone. But the true price was time, the Reich's most precious commodity on the Eastern Front. One girl stole it, not with bullets, with planning. Schaefer, who once believed order would crush resistance, now reviewed documents that felt more like factory blueprints than war reports. Every wire, every charge, every escape route, mapped, shared, reused. He once wrote in his field journal, "They are scattered, disorganized." Now he crossed the sentence out, because they weren't. They were networked, they were trained, and they were winning. April 1945. The war neared its end. In a burned-out village south of Łódź, an American officer sifted through what was left of a German logistics outpost. Files, maps, photos. In a rusted drawer, he found one picture, grainy, blurred, of a girl in a long coat. She was tying a rope across a road. She was smiling. Nothing else in the frame. No trucks, no soldiers, just her and the rope. The officer didn't know her name, but across the room, an older German prisoner looked up and whispered, "That's her!" He didn't need to ask which her. She tied it like she'd done it before, the prisoner said, eyes locked on the photo. Like it wasn't the first convoy, and wouldn't be the last. Then silence. No anger, no hate, just memory. Like a scar that didn't heal. Schaefer never returned to active duty. Captured in 45, interrogated, released. In 1954, he wrote in his memoir, "We were crushed not by firepower, but by foresight." He added one line that history rarely quotes, but those who read it never forget. "We drove east with maps. She stood still with rope." Outside the village, the road is quiet now. No trucks, just wind. And somewhere in the dirt, maybe still, a piece of rope waits, tied at both ends.